So hopefully that was ample time to complete the warm-up. Per usual, I do want to deliver my brief message about taking good notes. I just had a brief conversation with Jaden during the lunch break, and I was pleased to know that he's been working hard to take good notes, just like everyone in the class should be. So it starts now. Every day when you see this screen that says by the end of today at the top, and it has the title of the lesson at the bottom and the date, that's an indicator that you should have your notebook out and you should start writing. You should always include the title, which today is sex-linked traits and karyotypes, and you should also always include today's date, which is Friday, October 30th, 2020. And it's a good idea to write down that it is Unit 7, Day 5. That way, if you go back and you want to look at some review material and you know which day and in which unit it was taught, you have an easy access to the notes that you've already taken on those days, and you can compare it to anything new that you're hoping to learn or hoping to go over. So good notes are really at the foundation of academic success. Being able to return to the things that you've learned previously, look at it, compare it to the things that you've learned more recently, add to it. This is the making of a good student, of a strong student. The objective for today's lesson is that biologists will be able to examine how certain inheritable traits are passed on via the two sex chromosomes. The essential question that we will seek to answer: why are people who are born male more likely to inherit sex-linked disorders? So I'll leave this on the screen for about 10 more seconds as you all take this opportunity to get your notes in order. Okay. So before we talk about some actual examples of sex-linked traits, we do need to be sure that we know where these sex-linked traits are located. Sex-linked traits are found on your X chromosome. I've got specific things highlighted for a reason, so we should be ready to take some intentional strategic notes. But the X chromosome contains up to 155 million nucleotides. So 155 million of A's, T's, C's, G's, all ordered in a very specific way. And we've got to keep in mind that if I've got a long segment of DNA, like 155 million letters of DNA, then along that DNA is going to be much smaller sections that we call genes that actually code for a protein. So this X chromosome has 155 million letters of DNA, very, very long. But along that long section of DNA, I've got smaller sections called genes, and I've got 800 to 900 of those, between 800 and 900. I also want you all to take some time to notice just how big this X chromosome is as we compare it to the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is obviously much smaller, and it is only about 58 million base pairs long. So it has, if we compare it back to the X chromosome, about a third of the amount of DNA that the Y chromosome does. And it also has about a quarter of the number of genes that the Y chromosome has. The genes that are located on the Y chromosome lead to the development of male phenotypes. They lead to the development of male sex characteristics, like broad shoulders, like a deeper voice, like more body hair, and most importantly, like testes, where sperm are produced and stored. Okay. Now we can see them in comparison to one another. We can see that the X chromosome is so much larger than the Y chromosome. The reason for this is that the X chromosome has a lot more DNA. It's got over 3 times the amount, well, almost 3 times the amount of DNA and over 3 times the number of genes. So many more genes are located on this X chromosome. We call those genes the genes that lead to sex-linked traits. Sex-linked traits. So keep in mind that the Y chromosome contains the genes that lead to male characteristics. So if a person is born without a Y chromosome, meaning they only have those 2 X chromosomes, then what do we expect them to be? A person who does not have a Y chromosome, what would we expect them to be?
A boy?
No, this person does not have a Y chromosome.
Oh, a girl.
Yes, we would expect them to be born a female. So females are born with 2 X chromosomes. So that means in the other case, a person who is born male must be born with what chromosomes? What do we think?
X and Y.
Exactly. They have 1 X and 1 Y. Good job. So this is what you should write down. People who are born female have 2 X chromosomes. People who are born male have 1 X chromosome and 1 Y chromosome. So people born female, 2 X chromosomes. People born male, 1 X and 1 Y. Again, we just discussed this, but the X chromosome is much, much bigger than the Y chromosome. We saw it in this picture. We can see how much bigger that pink X chromosome is than the Y chromosome. So this means that the sex-linked traits are found on the X chromosome. This also means that because males only have 1 X chromosome, they are more likely to express these traits because they either have it or they don't. There's no way for them to be heterozygous. They can't have 1 dominant allele and 1 recessive allele. They either have the 1 dominant or they have the 1 recessive. That's it. So they're more likely to express sex-linked traits. And this will make more sense in a couple of slides. But we have to keep in mind that our sex-linked traits are found only on the X chromosome, not on the Y. You don't have sex-linked chromosomes on your Y chromosome. Sex-linked traits on your Y chromosomes. Okay. So some common examples of these sex-linked traits: male pattern baldness is a sex-linked trait, color blindness, and muscular dystrophy. These are all sex-linked traits. Okay. So remind me. Well, actually, I want you all to take about 30 seconds to copy this chart down before we fill it in. Please write this chart down in your notes. Escriba este cuadro. Cuadro.
So, Mr. Rudd,
Yes.
it's a males only have one X chromosome, right?
Correct.
Okay, I made sure I had to get that written down.
Good. Thank you. Good question. All right. So hopefully that was time to write down this chart. Now let's fill it in. So can someone tell me what the female sex chromosomes are? What are the female sex chromosomes? What are the female sex chromosomes?
The chromosomes are X and X, right?
Good. XX. Excellent job. And what about the male sex chromosomes?
X and Y.
X and Y. Good. So you can go ahead and write those into your chart. What about, so if I have a female who is homozygous dominant, and we're using some random, let's just use a random trait that we're going to use the letter B for. So a capital B is used for the dominant allele, and a lowercase b would be used for the recessive allele. So a female who is homozygous dominant, does anybody have any idea of what that would look like? Okay, that's kind of tricky the first time, but let's look at this. So we still have, because these are sex-linked traits, we still need to include the sex chromosomes to indicate that this person is female. So we still have X, X. And then in order to indicate that this person is homozygous dominant, we put the dominant allele on each of their X chromosomes. So a capital B on this X chromosome and a capital B on this X chromosome. We call these superscripts because they are written up top. Kind of like if you were to square something or cube something, you raise it to the power of 2, the 2 gets raised, the 3 would get raised. Here, we just raise the B. Okay, so this would be a homozygous dominant female because homo meaning the same. She's got the same allele on both chromosomes, and they are both the dominant allele. The male, of course, only has one X. So I cannot put this, I can't put a B next to his Y. The Y does not carry sex-linked traits. I can only put these letters, these alleles, on my X chromosome. Oops, didn't mean to show that. Okay, so hopefully you all didn't catch my little quick error there. Can someone tell me, if we know what homozygous dominant looks like, can someone tell me what heterozygous would look like for a female?
Mr. Rudd,
Yes.
wouldn't hetero be X with a capital B and X with a lowercase b for the female?
Excellent. Excellent, yes. And then for a male, we cannot have a heterozygous genotype. That was an excellent job of putting your thinking cap on and coming up with the heterozygous genotype for a female. But for a male, it doesn't exist because they only have one X chromosome. You cannot put anything on the Y chromosome. So please make sure you're filling in your chart accordingly. Okay, and then our last one, homozygous recessive. What would a homozygous recessive female look like? What do we think the homozygous recessive female looks like? If we know homozygous dominant looks like this, then what would homozygous recessive look like? No thoughts or people sending messages to the chat? Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Jaden. Yes, because I wasn't looking at the chat. But you are right, Jessica. So we've got two lowercase b's. Of course, the lowercase b is used for our recessive allele. So a person who is homo recessive has two of the same alleles, and they're both recessive, so they're both lowercase. Again, a male only has one X, so you can only put one allele on their X chromosome. The Y does not get an allele. So this is why men are more likely to develop traits, because they either have the dominant or they have the recessive. There is no heterozygous genotype for males. Okay, that means that if there is a recessive disorder, as some of the disorders that we're going to look at in this class period are, then a man has a 50% chance of having it because he either has the dominant version of the allele or he has the recessive version of the allele, which would give him the disorder. A woman, on the other hand, could have a homozygous dominant allele, which would not give her the disorder. She could have a heterozygous genotype, which would also not give her the disorder, or she could have the homozygous recessive genotype, which would give her the disorder. So her chances are only 33%. She has 3 possible outcomes, only one of which would give her the disorder. A man has 2 possible outcomes. And if one gives him the disorder, then he's got a 50% chance. Okay, so males are more likely to have to express the sex-linked traits. All right. Okay. So there's also something important that we need to write down, make sure that we have the definition for, and that's called a carrier. Carriers are females who have the heterozygous genotype. Carriers are females who have the heterozygous genotype. This means that they're not actually affected by the trait. They don't have the trait, but they do have a recessive allele, so they can pass it on to their offspring. So a carrier is heterozygous. They are not affected by the trait, but they can pass the trait on to their offspring. Okay. So there are disorders, that are sex-linked recessive, and there are sex-linked dominant disorders. You all don't get tested on the sex-linked dominant disorders, so I won't talk about them. But sex-linked recessive disorders will only affect 2 people. They will affect homozygous recessive females, and they will affect males with the recessive allele. That's it. They don't affect homozygous dominant females. They don't affect carriers who are heterozygous females, and they don't affect males with the dominant allele. Okay, so these are the only 2 types of genotypes that are affected by these sex-linked recessive disorders. Okay. All right, so let's get some Punnett square practice going. So we're going to focus on this sex-linked disorder called hemophilia. It's a sex-linked recessive disorder that causes excessive bleeding. So people who have hemophilia are what we call hemophiliac, and this means that they bleed very easily, they bruise very easily. Small cuts can bleed profusely. Even a nosebleed can bleed for an abnormally long period of time. So this is a very dangerous disorder because it just means that your blood is clotting as well as it should be, and you're much more susceptible to losing quite a bit of blood with even small injuries. So not good stuff. But we're going to use it to practice here. And I'm going to use a capital H to indicate the dominant allele, and I'm going to use a lowercase h to indicate a recessive allele. So because this is a recessive disorder, that means that only certain people are affected by this actual disorder. Only homozygous recessive females can be affected, and only only males with the recessive allele can be affected by it. So let's see what that looks like. We've got our Punnett square here. I do want you all to copy this down for me. It doesn't need to be too fancy. You just need to draw your box, and you need to draw your alleles on the outside of the box to represent the parent genotypes. Okay. So what's one thing that we notice about the mother already? What do we notice about her genotype? What can we call the mother? And I'm looking at the chat now just in case someone sends something. What can we call that mother based on the genotype that she has? She's got an X with a dominant allele, and she's got an X with a recessive allele. What is that called?
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous, good. She's got one of each. Her alleles are different. That's what hetero means, different. So she's got one of each. And when a female is heterozygous, there's another term, a more specific term that we can call her. We just talked about it a couple slides ago. What's that term? For a heterozygous female, what is she? A heterozygous female would be considered, we just talked about it. I just had you guys write it down. Carriers, excellent. Thank you, Alyssa. Heterozygous females are carriers. This means that the mother has, as we can see here, she has the trait, not the trait, she has the allele for hemophilia, but she herself is not a hemophiliac because she also has a dominant allele. This dominant allele, this capital H, it tells the other lowercase h, hey, I'm taking over here. You don't get to control the outcome of this person's genetics. I'm the big guy. I get to control what happens. And what I say goes, and I'm not going to code for hemophilia. So even though this person has that gene in one of her chromosomes, she won't actually develop the trait. However, she can pass this on to her children. She can pass it on to her offspring. And that's what we're going to see. What about the father? Does he have hemophilia? Look at his genotype. Is he a hemophiliac?
No.
No, he is not. Good, Joseph. And how can you tell he's not, Joseph?
Because he has one that's dominant in the Y. You can't have nothing there.
Good. He's got a dominant allele on his X chromosome. And of course, we can't put anything on the Y because the Y does not carry sex-linked traits. So this father is healthy. He does not carry the recessive allele, so therefore he is healthy. Okay. Now we're actually going to perform our cross. What'd you say?
It's my fault.
Oh, you're fine. So when we do our cross, what do we put in this top left box? What genotype goes in that top left box?
XH, dominant.
We get a homozygous dominant. We should end up with 2 capital H's. Oh, I'm sorry. Wow. Hold on. Let's go back for a while. Okay. So the mother's X with a dominant allele drops down. The father's X with a dominant allele slides over. And we end up with 2 X's, both with the dominant allele. So they are homozygous dominant. So that's the genotype. Can anyone tell me what the phenotype of this person is? Meaning, are they male? Are they female? Are they healthy? Are they a hemophiliac? Are they a carrier? What's going on here?
Say it again.
So we know the genotype of this person. We can see that the genotype is XH, capital H, X, capital H. So we know that the genotype is homozygous dominant. But can you tell me what the phenotype is? Meaning, can you tell me, is this person, this XHXH, are they a male or are they female? Are they healthy or are they hemophiliac? Are they a carrier? What can you tell me about them?
It's a female. I know that.
Okay, we know that we know that this person is a female. How do you know that, Joseph?
Because it's 2 heterozygous dominants. I mean, not heterozygous dominant. It's 2 dominant alleles.
It's two dominant alleles, but what else? Because
You got the X there.
yes, it's 2. There are 2 X's. Okay, so that's how we know it's a female because there are 2 X chromosomes. And what else? Is this person healthy or not? Do they have hemophilia?
They're healthy.
They are indeed healthy. We know that they're healthy because they have the dominant allele. Okay, so this means that they do not have hemophilia. Hemophilia is the recessive allele. All right, let's do the next one. What goes in the top right box over here? What genotype goes over here in the top right box? Good, Jessica. So we need 1 recessive H from the mother, and we also get 1 capital dominant H, 1 dominant allele from the father. Good job. So everyone should be able to see that. We just drop this allele down, and we slide this allele over, and so we end up with this genotype right here. Now, if this is the genotype, then what is the phenotype of this offspring? Is this offspring male or female? Is this offspring healthy or hemophiliac? Is this offspring a carrier? What can you tell me about them? Let's just start with male or female. Are they male or female?
Female.
They are indeed female. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Fanique. And what else can you tell me about them? If we look at their alleles, we know that the chromosomes are XX. That means that they are female. But look at these alleles, the H's. We've got one capital, meaning dominant, and one lowercase, meaning recessive. So what's the genotype here? I'm sorry, what's the phenotype here? Healthy, hemophiliac, or carrier?
It could possibly be carrier.
They are indeed a carrier. They are a carrier because they have the allele for hemophilia. They have this recessive allele. They carry it in their gene. That's what we mean by a carrier. They carry that allele in their genes. However, they're not affected by it. They just simply carry it. They can pass it on, but they don't actually have it because they also have a dominant allele. That's what we mean when we say carrier. The mother is the same way. The mother has a dominant allele, and she also has a recessive allele. So she carries this recessive allele, the gene for hemophilia, in her genes, in her DNA. But she's not affected by it. She just simply carries it. Okay, that's what we mean by a carrier. Okay, let's go to the bottom left box. What should go down here in this bottom left box?
It's a male.
It is going to be a male, and Jessica just told us that we've got X with a capital H because we're getting that dominant H, that dominant allele from the mother. And then we've got a Y. We're getting that Y from the father. So we've got X with a dominant H, a dominant allele, Y. And Joseph just told us that this person will be a male, but what else do we know about them? Are they healthy? Do they have hemophilia? Are they a carrier? What's going on here?
Healthy male.
What's that?
Healthy male.
They are a healthy male. Excellent. Now, keep in mind, males cannot be carriers. So I threw that in there to kind of trick you guys a little bit. Males can't be carriers. Only females can be carriers. Either males have it or they don't. So in this case, this male does not have the recessive allele. He has the dominant allele, so he's healthy. And then our last box over here, what should go in this last bottom right box? What should go in this last bottom right box? Let's see. X, Y, and oh, I see you guys are sending messages. Good. So we drop down the recessive allele.
XH.
Yeah, it's going to be X lowercase h, Y.
And then Y.
So what is this person's phenotype? McCarran, be careful. Make sure that's a lowercase h. It should be a recessive h. Okay, Jessica, be careful because we've got a recessive H here. So remember, the recessive H is what causes hemophilia. So this man is not healthy. He's got hemophilia. So this is why it's trickier for males. They only have one opportunity to get it right. This offspring got it right. He's got the healthy H. He's got the dominant H. This offspring is in trouble. He's got hemophilia because he's got the recessive H. They only have the one opportunity. Females can have the dominant allele on either one of their X chromosomes. It could be on this one, or it could be on that one, or it could be on both. And in any case, it would still prevent them from having the disorder. But men only get the one chance. Otherwise, they will have it. Now, when we do our analysis, this is what we come up with. There's a 25% chance that these two individuals will have a child who is a carrier of the disorder. There's a 75% chance that these two individuals will have a child who is healthy, meaning a child who does not have hemophilia. And there's a 25% chance that they have a child who is a hemophiliac. All right, so you got to ultimately be able to do some analysis. It's not just about writing these things into the boxes. It's about being able to analyze it. Okay, let's do some more practice. So baldness is a sex-linked recessive disorder. If we represent the dominant allele with a capital B and the recessive allele for baldness with a lowercase b, can you predict who will suffer from baldness? So people who have the lowercase recessive b might be bald, right? That's what baldness is going to be, this lowercase b here. Keep that in mind. But it's still a recessive disorder. So it can still be hidden by a dominant allele. If there is a dominant allele present, then it will hide the recessive allele. It'll take over. It'll say, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to do me. That way this person doesn't end up bald. So let's look at this first genotype here. Is this person bald or not bald? No calvo or calvo?
Not bald.
Yes, good, Joseph. This person is not bald. Why? Because they have a dominant allele. That dominant allele is going to take over and it's going to hide this recessive allele. What about this person right here? Are they bald or not bald? They are not bald. Thank you, Fanique. They also have a dominant allele, so they're not going to be bald unless they choose to be. What about this next person here? Bald or not bald? Good. Fanique, this person is also bald. They have the recessive allele. This would be a bald male. They're XY, so we know that they have to be a male, but they also have the recessive allele. They have a recessive B, so they will indeed be bald. What about next? This person. Good. This person here is homozygous dominant. They have two dominant alleles, so they are not bald. And this person, what about this one right here?
Bald.
Yes, this person is bald. What about this person?
Bald.
Now, Anthony, I like the way you're thinking. I do like the way you're thinking because you see these recessive alleles, but something's off about this
Mm-hmm.
that you need to be careful about.
It has a
What's
Y.
off here? Huh?
It has a Y.
Okay, so it does have a Y, but this person has a Y too. So why is this one wrong, but this one's not wrong?
But that one, yeah. Because that one has only one and that one has two. Two
One what?
recessive.
Okay, so this person has two recessive alleles.
That one has one recessive, this one has two.
Okay, that's true. This one has one recessive allele.
Mm-hmm.
This one has two recessive alleles.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, but
and that Y
what's
alone.
wrong? Yes, this Y does not have anything here. That's what I'm trying to get at. So we cannot have this.
Mm-hmm.
Can someone tell me why we can't have this here?
Okay.
Why can we not have this situation?
The recessive for Y doesn't exist.
Oh, I had that for note.
Can you say that one more time?
No, that's that's an X with a capital B and an X with a lower B. That doesn't exist.
So the X is not the problem.
No, yeah, male.
Keep going. Keep going. You're almost there. I can tell you.
Genotype. The male part does not exist. The male.
Exactly. Exactly. Good. So you wrote that chart down. So what we're getting at is, remember, our Y chromosome does not carry sex-linked traits. So you should never see a letter next to the Y, right? Look over here. There's no letter next to this Y. Look over here. There's no letter next to this Y. I should never have an allele on my Y chromosome. They don't carry sex-linked traits. So that's wrong. That's incorrect right there. We can't have that. Good job, Anthony. I'm glad you are engaging with us now. And good job too, Joseph. I heard you contributing as well. All right, let's knock these last two out. A carrier female. Is a carrier female bald or not bald? Thank you, Fanique. Carrier female is not bald. And what about a homozygous recessive person? Homozygous recessive. They are going to be bald. Yes. In fact, here's the homozygous recessive person right here. Good. Okay, now we're going to do more practice problems, and this is where we will actually make our Punnett squares. We've got 3. Let's see how quickly we can get through them. I do want you all to write these down, so I'm not going to rush you, but I do want to make sure that you all have these in your notes as practice. Maybe even the last one, I'll give you 3 minutes to see if you can figure it out on your own. Okay, so the question. Male pattern baldness is a sex-linked recessive trait. A female carrier of the trait mates with a male that has male pattern baldness. What percentage of their children will have this trait? So what's the first thing we always need to do? I've been saying it for the last 4 days when we are making a Punnett square, or when we're trying to solve one of these questions. Thank you, Fanique. We need to make a key. So there's our key right there. I'm going to pause here for about 7 seconds to give you an opportunity to write this down. Okay. So I've gotten my key written down. I've got my 2 alleles. Now I need to figure out what these alleles code for. So if I've got an X chromosome with a dominant allele with a capital B, what is that? What phenotype does that give me?
Dominant.
It gives me the dominant phenotype, which in this case is what? Is it bald or not bald?
Not bald.
Not bald. This means we've got healthy hair. And then my X chromosome with a recessive allele gives me what?
Baldness.
Baldness. Excellent. Okay, and we're not quite ready to make our Punnett square yet because although we were given information about the parents in the question, we don't really know what their genotype is. And before we can make a Punnett square, we need to have the genotypes. We need to have, the letters written out and split up. So I need to kind of make another key of sorts, but specifically for my parents. So we've got some information in the question that tells us what the parent genotypes are. What's one word that tells us what the mom's genotype is?
Carrier.
Carrier. Excellent. So if she is a carrier, what does that mean her genotype is?
Female dominant and female recessive.
Good. We've got an X chromosome with a dominant allele and an X chromosome with a recessive allele. Good job. This means that this genotype is heterozygous. Heterozygous. What about dad? What is his genotype?
It's recessive, so wouldn't it be X with a recessive B and Y by itself?
Excellent. Good job. So we're going to have X with a recessive B, which is the lowercase b, and then with a Y, because dad is obviously a male. So X, Y are the male chromosomes. Okay. Now we can start to make our Punnett square. So I'm going to pause here for 8 seconds to give you all an opportunity to draw a nice sloppy box. Okay, so I'm going to put mom on top. Mom's genotype is going to go on top. She's got an X with a dominant allele and an X with a recessive allele. Now, you can put mom on the left if you choose to, as long as you keep mom's alleles together. They both have to go on the same side. Doesn't matter which side you write them on, as long as they go on the same side. I'm going to put dad's genotype on the left here. So he's got an X chromosome with a lowercase b, a recessive allele, and he's also got the Y chromosome because dad is a male. Now I'm going to actually do my cross. So what should go in the top left box when I do my cross? What should go in this box right here? Good, Jessica, and good, Fanique. So we've got a heterozygous genotype. The X with the dominant allele slides down. The X with the recessive allele slides over, and I end up with a heterozygous genotype. What about in the top right box? What goes over here? We should be getting good at this now. Good, Jessica. So you're starting to see it quickly. We're going to drop down the X with the recessive allele and slide the X slide dad's X with the recessive allele over. And this is what we get. Even here, it doesn't matter which order you write them in. I could have written my lowercase b first and my capital B second. It doesn't really matter. Now, typically you will see the capital letter written first, and typically you will see X written before Y, but ultimately it doesn't matter because everybody has two copies. Everybody has two alleles. So as long as you have them written, then you'll be okay. Next, I'm going to take this X with a dominant allele from mom, and I'm going to drop that down. I'm going to take dad's Y, and I'm going to slide it over. Good job, Fanique. And then my last box, what should end up in that last box? Good job, Jessica. Okay, so we've got our Punnett square, but we're not done because we haven't answered the question. The question asks, what percentage of their children will have the trait for male baldness? So what percentage of the children actually are going to be struggling with baldness? Alyssa, let's be careful with that. Let's check that again. I know why. I think I know why you said 75%, but that is not correct. We do have 75% of children are going to inherit from at least one parent the recessive allele. This person gets the recessive allele from the father. This person gets the recessive allele from both parents. This person gets the recessive allele from the mother. But not all three of them have the baldness trait. So, does anybody have the answer here? %50. Thank you, Fanique. Yes. So let's take a closer look at this. So Alyssa, I think you were looking at this person and thinking that because they have this recessive allele right here, that they're going to be bald. But keep in mind, they also have a dominant allele, which means that this dominant allele is going to dominate the recessive allele. It's going to say, I see you over there, but it doesn't matter that you're there because I'm here and I'm the big guy here. I'm the boss. So I decide what happens. So this person doesn't develop baldness because they have a dominant allele. Over here, this person is homozygous recessive. So they have two recessive alleles. So there is nobody over here to say, hey, we're not going to develop baldness. So this person does end up developing it. And then down here, X recessive BY, this is a male who has a recessive allele. So he must have developed the baldness. So of course he has it. So we've got two offspring who develop baldness. They both will develop the trait. Okay, so another sex-linked recessive trait is color blindness. So if you are struggling to see any of the numbers in this image, It either means your computer is messed up, or it means you might be colorblind. You might not be able to see some of the colors that are present here. But if you can see these colors easily, if you can see this 7, you can see there's 13 here, 16, 8, 12, and 9, then you have color sight, and that's a great thing. We all like to be able to see colors. But the next practice problem has a man with color blindness who marries a woman who is a carrier for color blindness. What is the likelihood that they will have a son who was colorblind? So first thing we need to do, as Fanique recently said, is set up a key. My key in this case, again, this is a sex-linked recessive trait. So that means that my dominant N is going to be for color sight. That means people who are not affected by color blindness. My lowercase n is going to be for color blindness. I also need to find out what the parent genotypes are. So there's a lot of useful information in the question that should tell us what the parent genotypes are. Can anybody give me mom's genotype? XN, one up, one capital, one lowercase. Thank you, Jessica. We know that because the mom is a carrier. So there's a woman who is a carrier. So she's heterozygous. What about dad's genotype? I know we're running out of time. We only have 3 minutes left, but let's go ahead and finish strong. Good, Jessica. So dad, his genotype is actually given to us right here. We know he is suffering from color blindness. We know he's a male, so he's got X and Y chromosomes, and his X chromosome has the recessive allele. So now we're ready to make our Punnett square. I'm going to put mom on top again just for consistency's sake. So there's one of her chromosomes, X with a dominant allele. There's the other chromosome, X with a recessive allele. Dad is going to go on the left. He's got his X with the recessive allele, and he's got his Y chromosome. So let's actually do the cross now. I'm going to kind of speed up here just so we can get through it. But mom's dominant allele is going to drop down. Dad's recessive allele is going to slide over. I end up with a heterozygous genotype here. Mom's recessive allele is going to drop down. Dad's recessive allele is going to slide over. I end up with a homozygous recessive genotype here. Mom's dominant allele is going to drop down. Dad's Y chromosome is going to slide over. So I end up with a male with a dominant allele. And then last box, mom's recessive allele drops down. Dad's Y chromosome slides over. I end up with a male with the recessive allele. Now, we're not done. We finished our Punnett square, but we need to answer the question. What is the likelihood they will have a son who is colorblind? We have like 50 seconds left. Someone tell me the answer. What is the likelihood they have a son who is also colorblind?
25%.
Excellent, Joseph. The likelihood is 25%. okay? Only one of those boxes meets that criteria of being both a male child and a colorblind child. So it's a 25% chance. Good. Okay, so we didn't quite get to everything I wanted to get to, but that's okay. When we come back on Monday, we'll just continue from where we left off. I hope everyone has a great weekend, but I do want to say that I recently sent a link to the chat. Let me send it again. That is a YouTube channel or a YouTube playlist where you will be able to find all of our class recordings all the way back to the beginning of the year. So if you want to go back and review some classes that you've missed, that's where you can do it. As soon as this class is done, I'm going to upload this recording. Okay, so I'm going to be uploading them every day. So good job. I hope you all have a nice, productive, and relaxing week.